Did you know that Mike Myers has the same name as Michael Myers? The Halloween killer and Mike Myers, the comedian.
I never really thought of it, so you just put that in my head. Now I'm going to be thinking it.
I think of weird things like that.
So if the two of them were like kind of like having fun together, Mike Myers could be walking out, Michael, in his huge, tall creepiness with his knife and his mask.
And Mike Myers can tell him a joke.
Well, no, I was going to just say, and then Michael Myers just then burst out and does one of those skits from, what was it?
You're talking about Wayne's World.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, this is getting kind of weird. How about trucking? Trucking. Let's hit the sponsors, Ruth Ann. Today's podcast is brought to you by DriveWise.com. That's DriveWyze. And if you are looking to get a app on your phone instead of a transponder in your truck, a machine versus an app, all you got to do is go to DriveWise.com and download it today, and you could be bypassing the scales in the blink of an eye. And we've got some really cool fan letters about DriveWise this week and saying how they really love it and their companies use it. So if you're an owner-operator or anybody that's independent, download it. If you're a company that hasn't really tried it, go to DriveWise. That's DriveWyze.com. Tell them Talk CDL sent you. Download it. It's free. Carter Lumber also were brought to you, Ruth Ann. Carter Lumber has over 160 locations east of the Mississippi, and they are looking for Class A and Class B drivers to run local home every day. You can go to carterlumber.com/TalkCDL and fill out their little short application form. That's carterlumber.com/TalkCDL for a local job today. And one more sponsor, Ruth Ann, J.J. Keller.
J.J. Keller's the trucker secretary.
The trucker secretary. If you're looking, and this is the truth, if you're a company that is maybe short or understaffed right now, it's hard times hiring people, and you are looking for a little extra help keeping yourself organized for paperwork, call Keller at 888-601-2017. Tell them that we call him the trucker secretary, and tell them Talk CDL sent you. That's 888-601-2017. Ruth Ann, today on the podcast.
Lay it on me.
Lay it on you. Well, it's just a couple things going on in the industry, and I will tell you the hot topic of the week is the cost of fuel, and companies are laying off. It's been really tough, but what I'd really like to talk about more than anything, not just the cost of fuel, but I'd really like to talk about the lease purchase drivers and the independent owner operators versus, like the big companies. Obviously they can go to Camion's break-even calculator if they want to and download that'll help them. But a couple things I wanted to point out to a lot of these drivers and what's happening right now in the last, say, 4 to 5 weeks. And I can give, what's today's date? May 20th. And in the last, say, 4 or 5 weeks, fuel has gone to record-breaking levels. It's gone to the point where it is hard for a truck driver to really get a lot of gravy at the end of the week. They're still profiting, but here's the problem. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to tell me.
Well, most of these guys that are feeling it harder are the drivers that are on the spot market. And that means...
I was going to say, what does that mean?
Well, the spot market is they're out in what I call broker land. That's where they're getting their freight. They're not contracted. They're just getting freight from brokers. Of course, we all know brokers' reputations. They're going to keep what they can.
They're going to keep you broke. Sorry.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, but brokers will keep you broke.
It came out. I don't necessarily believe it, but they do. It just came out.
That's why you're on the show, just to throw me off and keep it light. But no, seriously, the spot market, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, the cost of fuel is through the roof.
They realize that.
It's well over $1,000 to fill most drivers up if you're filling up from empty. And right now, I think the average truck driver is probably well over $2,000 a week in fuel costs, $2,000 to $2,500, depending on what you're getting for fuel. but the problem that goes with it is the rates have gone down. I watch the rates all day long. Just literally 4 or 5 weeks ago, dry van freight was like $3, $3.05 a mile. Right now, as of yesterday, I think it was at $2.47. Now, if you think about it, that's 50 to 60 cents a mile they lost at the same time the fuel's going up. So the cost of running rigs right now has gone up, and the cost for the cost for hauling is going down in the dry market. And by the way, dry van is obviously the largest, the largest type of trucking there is. You got dry van and reefer. That's the two big ones. And then you got flatbed. They're the three main, and then tank. And then you've got pneumatic tank. And then you've got specialized LTL, and then heavy haul and all the other stuff that comes with it. But the most common trailer is the dry van, just a regular 53-foot dry van.
Most of our commodities are dry.
So I think what happened was, this is the perfect storm. And I could be wrong, which probably ain't going to happen. But here's really what I believe. You had a perfect storm. You had the cost of fuel go through the roof. Then you had, prior to that, right around the first of the year, the stimulus checks stopped. At the end of last year, drivers were hanging on, but a lot of them have come back into the market, which creates more drivers, which makes also the cost of freight go down when you don't have to. When you're not that desperate to get trucks to haul it. When the pandemic was going on, these guys weren't even getting DOT'd most of the time. They were just running. They were letting them run without rules a lot of times because there was such a bad shortage of workers in the industry as a whole, not just truckers. So what happened is a lot of these guys come back in. Now, at one time, and this is just an example, at one time you might have had, say, a load coming out of somewhere, and there was, let's just say out of one customer, there might have been 10 loads coming out, but only 8 trucks available. Mm-hmm. So they were paying more than they really had. They were paying more because they had to. Mm-hmm. And that was going on not just out of one shipper, that's going on all across the country. Then all of a sudden you get this flood of drivers coming back into the industry. Mm-hmm. And now you have the 10 loads, and you might have 11 drivers, or you might have 10 drivers available. So it kind of brought the rates down, but then something else happened.
Dun, dun, dun.
The spring came.
So you got more drivers that want to drive because
all your scaredy drivers, mm-hmm. and I can say that because I'm a driver. All your scaredy drivers that stop driving in the winter because they're afraid of the snow, mm-hmm. they also come back into the market. Every year. So you had the perfect storm. You had the influx of drivers that were sitting on should I say sitting on their ass for 2 years. You had a bunch of those guys. And then you had the guys that are afraid of the snow. They came back in, and now everybody's running hot and heavy. Mm-hmm. And you mix that with a shortage, the supply and demand, where you have a lot of things that are behind on production. Mm-hmm. You mix that all together, and you have high price of fuel, and you have rates going down. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what's happening right now. And I know a lot of drivers, because I talked to a bunch of them, they're like, oh yeah, because the market just switched. It flipped upside down in the last 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding you. And what happened is, I've been talking to drivers, and they're telling me, well, they're quitting their company. They're leaving their company. Why? Because they're literally not making... some of these guys were doing $4,000 and $5,000 paychecks, and now they're down to like under $2,000, and that's a huge difference in pay. Would you not agree?
I would agree. And the problem is that's what it was before the big hike, and you had the drivers that stuck through it all and didn't sit down. They went and they worked. They weren't sitting around. So those drivers stayed with it all, and they got those big paychecks. And the other ones just sat at home getting the other because they didn't want to go to work. Well, the problem is the ones that stuck by it, that got the high amount, now they want to switch. But you don't want to switch any of your jobs. First of all, especially if you're one that was sitting at home, because the fact that you don't have... DOT requires the last 3 years to be verified. If you're at home for 2 years, you don't have much verifications.
Right. And as companies right now, companies are laying off workers right now.
They're starting to be picky again.
Well, they have to. They have to lay off workers right now to make up for the cost that they're losing in fuel, and with the rates going down. So that's hurting. There's some articles I have here I can read to you about a driver, a little small company that is laying off in-house, or, office personnel because he's trying to make up for the loss of revenue, and he's doing everything he can to not lose his company. And so this is what's going on in trucking right now. And the tables have really flipped hard. And I mean that sincerely. So think about this. One of the big things that your owner operators and your lease operators, where they really hurt themselves. And I was talking to a driver the other day. I'm like, dude, let me ask you a question, man. What kind of surcharge you get there? He goes, that's one of the questions I failed to ask when I came here, because the rates were so good. Nobody was really caring about a fuel surcharge when the price of fuel was down. So everything was running fine. And so what happens is, I've talked to a lot of these lease drivers and these owner operators, and I say, what are you getting for surcharge? And they go, well, it's built in. I get 100% of the surcharge. Okay, well, what's your surcharge each week? Well, I don't know what the surcharge is, but it's built in. That means you just got bullshitted. That's what if you're a driver out there and you're driving for a company that says the surcharge is built in and they're not showing you what it is, that means you got kind of hoodwinked. I'm kid you not, Ruthann. That's just the truth.
I agree. You
were BS'd, okay? And I will guarantee you're not.
You got a 1 cent surcharge.
No, but seriously, I'm going to explain. What I wanted to do is I wanted to explain, most people do not understand how fuel surcharge works.
Okay.
They really don't. I'm going to explain this.
It's good.
This was brought on by, I think it was the FMCSA, but here's the rules to the fuel surcharge, how it actually works. Back when fuel was going up in the 90s, okay, and it was close to, once it went over $1, okay? When fuel hit, they call this the mark. When fuel hit $1.20, they made a rule. And this was back then, and it's changed in different ways. But this is what the DOE goes by. The rule they gave was, for every 5 cents above $1.20 on the fuel pump, the truck driver will get a 1 cent surcharge per mile. So that was at 5 cents. Now watch this. Over the years, it's changed to 6. 6 is now the mark, which means they don't pay as much on the surcharge, but it's still pretty good. Now watch this, how this works. Right now, can you pull up the average cost of diesel right now? Is it like $5.50, $6? I see $6 too, somebody's saying. But even at $5.50, let me see here. I'm gonna show everybody how this really works. So for everything over $1.20, every 6 cents, you're supposed to get a 1 cent surcharge. Now watch the math on this. Ruthann's pulling up the average cost of diesel right now. Ruthann, if you don't see any averages, I'm just gonna go at $5.50.
No, it depends on what state you're in. Like Alaska is 5.319, and then California, of course, is 6.58, and Connecticut 6.40.
Let's do $6. Let's just say it's $6. Okay, so here's how it works. If the average price of diesel is $6, and we could say it's $5.50, $5.80, but I just want to show you how the actual surcharge is supposed to work. So you have your $6 fuel price, and you subtract the $1.20 mark from it. That leaves you $4.80. Then you divide that by 0.06, which is 6 cents. Okay. And that comes to 80 cents. So right now, and I know some trucking companies that are paying this, literally. Right now, if you're at $6 a gallon, you should be getting an 80-cent surcharge. Now, I'm going to calculate that for you. This is separate from your percent or your mileage rate or whatever they're paying you. So you have 80 cents a mile. Okay, let's say you run 3,000 miles, right? Times 3,000, that's $2,400. You should receive separate. See, basically the surcharge should be paying for your fuel. It's the truth. And if you're out there and you're not getting that surcharge check, I'm just talking about, that's the $2,400 extra check. That doesn't include your pay.
That's not the pay. That's not anything to deal with your pay or your per diem or anything.
Anything. So let's say you brought home, or let's say you brought home $3,000 on a lease, or let's say you brought only $2,100 home. You should get that surcharge check, okay, and that should almost wash your fuel. And I think we figured if you're getting 7 miles to the gallon right now, you might pay $180 out of your pocket for fuel. If you're getting 7.5 miles to the gallon, you're probably spending around $30 to $40 for the entire week in fuel. That's a huge savings, which a lot of these guys are not getting. I already know they're not.
No, because what's going on is the company's just taking that money, and the CEO or whoever it is just kind of like sliding that in underneath them.
Yeah, I guarantee you some are getting it. So what can a driver do about that? Well,
let's tell them.
Well, number one, if you're negotiating with the broker yourself, ask for a surcharge. Try to see if, you can get a little surcharge out of this, because a lot of time the shippers are paying it. It's the truth.
And the broker's keeping it.
Somebody's keeping the surcharge. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'll tell you something else. If you are going to move around from company to company, because a lot of drivers right now, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm making half of what I was. Find a company that already has their own customers. And I'll tell you why. If you find a company with their own customers or their own freight, some companies produce their own freight, and some companies actually have contracted customers. Well, guess what the difference is there?
You know exactly what you're getting.
Right, their rates don't go down. See, right now on the spot market, the rates are going down. If you go with a customer, or you go with a trucking company that has actual customers, these are negotiated rates, and they're usually locked in for at least 2 or 3 years. So maybe on the way in, ask the customer, or ask the trucking company rather. I apologize. Ask the trucking company right out. What is your surcharge? That's the one of the biggest questions you should be asking every trucking company right now. What is your fuel surcharge, and how do you pay it? How do you base your surcharge? Do you base it off the DOE? And see, that's the national surcharge. The really good trucking companies base it off the DOE. I know of a couple companies that are paying, if the fuel goes up every 8 or 9 cents, that means their surcharge check would only be maybe 58 cents or 60 some cents, meaning they're finding ways to rip the drivers off still, even though they're collecting the surcharge. And some companies, they'll pay 80% to a driver, and they'll pay 80% all the way around, and keep 20% of the fuel surcharge for themselves. That surcharge is for the guy paying for the fuel.
Yeah. So if the company's paying for the fuel, it's their money. But if you're paying for the fuel, it's your, to where your lease is some of them, I know, some leases I've heard, the company takes care of all that extra stuff, but your check is a different mileage rate. But if it's a company that does not pay for the fuel and you're paying for it, that money is yours.
Exactly. And here's another question to ask a trucking company when you go in. Ask them, who is your customer and how long is the contracts good for? Because many truck drivers have gone in the door of a trucking company with the promise of all these good customers, and it was almost negotiation time, right, for the new contracts. And guess what? They either lost money on it, or guess what? Some other trucking company
lowballed it. They lost their customer.
Exactly. They can lose their customer, and then you're back to a trucking company that's fighting for freight now, back on the spot market possibly.
No, you say, do you have your own freight or do you have dedicated customers? If you have dedicated customers, what's your contract terms?
Exactly. These are really important questions to ask. If you're not asking these questions, I promise you're probably in for a loss in effect, or you're probably in for what you're going out of one and into the same. And I hear guys are like, all they're worried about is their percent. What's my percent? What's my percent? Really, what you need to do is really ask is, what are the rates, and what are you basing your freight on? Who are your customers? And explain to me how your surcharge works. If a trucking company tells you, oh, it's built in, it's built into the 80%. It's built into the 85%. It's built into the 90%. I promise you, you're getting ripped off. If you hear that,
because right now, I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off, Troy, but now, if you get 80% is what your pay is, but so much percent of that is the fuel that you're supposed to be getting back, which is supposed to be on top of that. That means your percent is not 80. Your percent is like 60 or less. And now because they're swallowing the rest of it. They're trying to make you think you're getting more, but they're really ripping you off, because they're keeping that money.
I'll give you an example of how these lease guys are working right now, the guys in the spot market. Like I said, $247 was the average freight rate right now, okay? So let's say a guy runs 3,000 miles, right? That's $7,410. I believe the average percent is 80% is what these guys are getting. So here's what their gross to the truck would be, $5,928. That's what they would get back. Now, let's say the fuel cost $2,400 for the week. Okay. So minus $2,400. Now you're working off $3,528. Now that $3,528, you got to take out the rest of the cost, and we'll do that in a second. But you just lost 40% of your gross to the fuel. If you don't have a fuel surcharge. See, if you go with a trucking company that has a fuel surcharge, you would get that back. You'd still be well over $5,000 working down from there. But let's say the average trucking company is going to charge you, let's just say $900 for the payment. So $3,528 minus $900, that's your trucking payment, right? That leaves you $2,628. And now let's just say, for the heck of it, with all your insurances, your trailer rental, everything, and your maintenance, which is usually between 10 and 14 cents, okay, which is another $450. Let's just say all of that's about another probably $700-800. So let's just say minus $800, minus $800. I'm just rounding. Now you brought home $1,828. Okay. A lot of these companies are doing 1099, 65, 70, 75 cents a mile, 1099. You run 3,000 miles. Guess what? You're bringing home between $200 and $2,200 without worrying about fuel.
No. And here's the thing. You also have to make sure of, and 1099 is really great with a lot of reasons, but you got to remember, you still have to pay the taxes. That's what the 1099 is they're not taking the tax portion out for you. You have to do it. And if you end up getting it where you're getting that separate check for your fuel, dump that right in there. You're not missing anything if you're set on that budget of getting whatever you're getting paid on your 1099. You know what I mean?
Well, what I was just trying to compare, though, is a guy that was leasing, that his gross was over $5,000 until it was all chopped out with that big fuel cost. He's making less than the guy that actually is just coming in as a company driver at, say, 70 cents a mile. He runs 3,000 miles. He gets a $2,100 paycheck. The guy that's leasing, getting 80% right now, he's running the risk of not making it. And if he doesn't get the miles or he doesn't get the freight, he's making less. It's a tough decision right now to be a lease operator if you're on the spot market. If you go to a trucking company that actually has customers, you're at least locked in the rates.
Exactly. And here's the thing. You could pull up the current gas prices. You can pull up current prices. And if you're a person that drives, like, say, a regional run, you already can look and see what your average fuel costs are per gallon. So you'll know that. So you could already kind of prepare yourself. I'm doing, this regional run that's generally 2,800 miles. And I go to these states and the average fuel, let's just say it's $5.70. So you can already figure out what your approximate fuel surcharge would be.
Right. Well, and that's exactly, they should actually know what they're paying at the pump. I know some companies they have like discounts where you're only paying, you're getting 10 cents off or 5 cents or 15 cents off.
That's a loyalty reward. That's it.
Well, yeah, but some do. I was talking to a company the other day. They said what happens is that goes by the spot market also, the fuel discounts. Not talking about the surcharges, I'm talking about the discounts. So the one company was telling me this one driver was pissed off at them because he wanted to know what he actually paid at the pump, and they're trying to explain to him, well, we don't know till the end of the day that it's negotiated. See, what happens is that they negotiate that. OPEC and that negotiates that stuff every day. So at the end of the day, you don't know really what the trucking company's paying for the fuel until the end of the day after the rates have been negotiated by the big wigs in the oil industry. And once they've established what their rate is that day, then the trucking companies know, okay, we just got a 7-cent discount. Okay, tomorrow we might only get a 5-cent. So each day, but you can still find out, what did I actually pay for my fuel? So if you got a 10-cent discount on $6, then you're paying $5.90. And then so you would subtract your $1.20. Just remember this, the $1.20 mark was when fuel surcharge in the United States kicked in years ago. So once fuel went above $1.20, they started handing out a surcharge. Once it was 6 cents above that, it was supposed to be 5, but it's now 6. Now, once it's above, if you take your calculator and you subtract the $1.20 from what you paid for fuel for the week, okay, your average per gallon, subtract that, that'll give you a number, and then divide 0.06 into it, and that will tell you what you should have been paying. Most companies, I think this past week, were paying 73 to 74 cents. But fuel jumped. There was a big jump this past week. And you know what they blame that on? The summer blend. You know how they're switching from winter blend fuel to the summer blend fuel? That's exactly what they were blaming it on this past week. It went up like another 30, 40 cents.
What would that have anything to do with it?
Well, they do that every year.
So it wouldn't gel?
Well, I think because of the winter...
An additive?
Right. The winter blend has allegedly some other chemicals in it, like you said, which doesn't...
But that wouldn't make it go up. It should make it go down because you're not having to add the stuff to help.
But I don't know. Maybe they put a different chemical. I don't know. All I know is when summer comes, which also brings more drivers.
Yeah, more traveling.
Because of traveling and everything. So every year, this is the excuse to actually go and bring the fuel cost up. So... Okay, so moving on. All right. So let's do a quick sponsor break real fast. We've got the company of National Carriers. National Carriers is out of the Dallas area, and their phone number is 888-311-7076. Ruth, and they're looking for student drivers right now. And they're also looking for lease purchase drivers and company over-the-road drivers. If you want to drive one of those big Kenworth T680s, call NCI at 888-311-7076. Ruth Ann, we're also brought to you by driving-tests.org. And that company is guaranteeing that you will pass your CDL. Mm-hmm. How important is that? Being that we get emails all the time from people that have failed it.
I think it's highly important. You're making a huge investment for your career. Why not spend the $50 or $40 that it costs to ensure that you pass?
And you know what? I tell these drivers all the time, it's for $50. They're guaranteed. I mean, I know you're paying $5,000 and $7,000 for your school, but this driving-test.org, for the extra little icing, they guarantee that you'll pass or your money back.
Right. Smart investment.
It's worth it. And then we are also brought to you by Camion.
Camion's break-even calculator.
Ruth Ann, at $6 a gallon, you guys better, I mean this sincerely, I don't care if you're JB Hunt listening to me or Swift, go to Camion.io/TalkCDL. That's Camion, KAMION.io/TalkCDL, and have all your drivers download this. If you're a smart company and you have company drivers, have your company drivers download this app and start trying to run their truck a little more efficiently. Every penny counts, and I can guarantee you right now, all those pennies that count are going to OPEC and the fuel companies.
Right.
So get some of them pennies back with this free download by Camion. I think that's it on sponsors, Dan.
That's it.
Okay, moving on. I'll tell you what, honestly, this is just me. I love trucking, but they say you can take every honest person in the trucking industry and they'd all fit in one room. Mm-hmm. Did you know that?
I heard that.
I hear people all the time that get into the industry and you just don't realize trucking itself for everybody. And we've all been in trucking, you guys and gals that are listening to me. But there's some people that are just getting into it and they're probably agreeing. You don't really know what you're getting into when you come into trucking. It hits you as a truck driver from every angle. Mm-hmm. There's so much stress. Ruth Ann, do you know the stress in trucking? Honestly, we're going to do a podcast on trucking and stress, but we're not going to do that now. But there's so much stress that falls on the truck driver and their family. And, on top of all that, you don't even get to see your family. So
you don't.
And I know a lot of companies bitch about about truck drivers. A lot of them do. Mm-hmm. They really do. They bitch about truck drivers because truck drivers are ornery. You know what I mean? And they don't take shit and all this other stuff. And a lot of companies, I've talked to them, and they kind of whine about truck drivers. Not the way they act. And there are a lot of bad ones, but there's also a lot of good ones. But you know what? When you're a truck driver and you're away from your home, and then you got to put up with the crap that truck drivers have to put up with, you're going to be ornery too. You're gonna get ornery.
I agree.
You should.
And I think it takes a special person to be a truck driver.
And something else, and we'll be talking about this on the next podcast rather. But it takes a special woman to be married to a truck driver.
Yes, it does.
It really does.
It does.
So, anyways, Miss Ruth Ann, who brightens up the show.
It's my spunky personality.
That's your job. Maybe we'll start calling you Spunky. I'll be like, this is Troy with Talk CDL and Spunky.
Well, I've been called worse.
Yeah. So do you have the word of the day for us?
I do.
Actually, don't you have an interesting fact today?
I do.
You were mentioning it to me earlier. I'm like, you know what? That'd be kind of an interesting fact. What was it about? Pop-Tarts or something? I'm kidding. What was it about?
It was...
Which, by the way, I like Pop-Tarts.
He does. It was when the first knock jokes came about.
So the first knock jokes, was there a year on that when they came?
Well, it was. Let's just put it this way: it was prior to 1930. So it was in modern English. So in modern English, let me rephrase that. Modern English wouldn't support it at the time because it's back when William Shakespeare was around. So what happened is during one of his plays, right?
Who's William Shakespeare's play?
Yeah, William Shakespeare. Everybody that ever had gone to school had to do some kind of Shakespeare. And everybody knows who Shakespeare is.
Right. Did Shakespeare actually do a knock joke?
Well,
knock.
In one of the plays in Macbeth, there's a time in Macbeth, it was actually in Act 2, Scene 3 of Macbeth, when the title character was being tortured. And he had just killed King Duncan, known as the Porter scene. So during this scene, because, plays were done by acts and scenes, not like a movie is. During this time frame, the porter happened to be drunken, and they also called him a gatekeeper. And during his little fit of being drunk on, I guess, probably fermented, some wine or whatever it was at the time.
And this is the gatekeeper?
Yeah.
Right.
He heard a distant knocking on the gate. And he was pretending then that because this whole torture scene was just going on, he pretended that he was the porter of Hellgate, right? So he said, knock, 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 who's there? Adding a bit of comic relief to the torture scene, right? We have it now. People will do it, like if they're doing torturing things. And anyways, I'm getting looked at really funky. So so that was his little bit of comic relief. And then they did another scene again where he did another little bit of a knock reference. Nothing like it is today, but in the 1930s, the modern knock joke actually started coming out and being caught on as the knock, who's there? And then a little bit of the joke would be in there. So it kind of, about 400 years span where the first knock joke came out.
Knock.
Who's there?
Ty
who?
Time to move on.
You suck.
I just thought that one up.
We noticed that, didn't we, everyone?
That was an interesting thing. That actually the knock joke started with Shakespeare. It's
in Macbeth.
That's pretty kind of cool.
During the torture scene when the porter was at Hellgate. So
really? Wow.
Act 2, Scene 3. So everybody can just go and Google it real quick because I'm sure at one point or another it'll be in there and you can see what the people believe was the first knock joke come out.
I got something on my mind that's not non-trucking related. It's just for the heck of it. Mm-hmm. We had a friend, a sister in the Lord, go in the hospital this past week, mm-hmm. and her arms went numb, and she couldn't stand. All this stuff. They mm-hmm. rushed her to the hospital all night there. They sent her home, and it's like 99% the same result. We don't know what was wrong with you. We don't know. Mm-hmm. It could be this. They did all kind of tests, but they don't know. Mm-hmm. The reason that I'm bringing this up because we were talking about this the other day. Somebody said, you know, but they're still going to bill her. Mm-hmm. If you took your car to a mechanic and they couldn't fix it, you don't get billed. You understand that? If you take your car to a mechanic and they can't fix it, you don't get billed. If you take your vacuum cleaner to a repairman and he can't fix it, they're not going to charge you because you're not getting it back fixed. You know, most services in the world, you take it to them. There may be a surcharge.
Yeah, sometimes they do like a little service
little service charge, but the hospital still bills you like $5 billion.
Yeah, the full prices of everything as if you were fixed.
Exactly. Like you did nothing for me. You fixed nothing, but yet you're going to rape me now.
And I didn't have a comfortable bed, a sloppy pillow, and my food was really blah.
And I laid there with freaking needles in me and with a gown on, everybody looking up
and I was woken up every hour and a half for my blood pressure.
Yeah, that's the actual point that I wanted to make that most people can relate to. How many people do you know that went to a hospital, went to a doctor over chest pains or this pain or that pain, and that the end result is, well, we just don't know what it is. But here's a bill. Here's a bill that's going to make your insurance company choke or you choke, one of the two. I just thought I would mention that. Maybe we're all in the same boat. It kind of pissed me off when I seen that the other night. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, word of the day.
Word of the day by Word Genius.
Word Genius.
Yes. And I'm going to tell you, it's a funny word. I'm just going to let you know that. Ready?
Let's hear it.
Fartlick.
Wait. Say that again?
Fartlick.
Fartlick?
Yeah, I'm not saying it. It's the computer saying it. It's them.
She's lying. It's her. Okay,
I am not.
No, it's not her.
Ready?
Yeah.
Fartlick.
Fartlick.
Well, like, Fartlek.
But it's pronounced fartlick.
Yeah, fartlick.
Fartlick. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want me to guess at it?
No, I'm honestly.
You don't want me to guess at this one?
No, I don't. So I'm just going to go ahead and get all of y'all's minds out the gutter.
What is it?
And I'm going to tell you what the word is. First of all, it's Swedish.
Okay, them bad Swedes.
The Swedish, and it was actually came about in like the 1940s.
Go ahead.
A system of training for distant runners in which the terrain and pace are continually varied to eliminate boredom and enhance psychological aspects of conditioning. I never will fartlick.
Okay, give me fartlick in a sentence.
As the marathon approached, Angie switched to fartlick training to prepare herself for the extended distance. Eric does long fartlick runs on Sundays to keep his training routine varied.
Eric does fartlicks? Is that what it said?
I know, right?
Eric, you're bad. We're 10. We're out of here.
Peace.
Peace. Praise the Lord.